You are such an ungrateful grandmother. Every time we need you, you have an excuse. It's like you don't even care about your own grandson. Jen's words sliced through the Sunday lunch air. My cheeks flushed, every eye in the room a burning pinpoint on me. Mike, my son, stared at his mashed potatoes as if they held the secrets of the universe. Jess swallowed, a visible effort. And little Leo, only 5, froze on the rug, his innocent gaze searching mine, trying to piece together why his mother was screaming at Grandma. The silence that followed was deafening. The bitter tang of humiliation burned in my throat, tears pricking at my eyes, all for refusing to watch Leo on Monday. An important appointment tomorrow, I mumbled, before I could stop myself from rising. My legs shaky, I walked to the bathroom, shut the door, and let the tears finally come. My reflection stared back. A 67-year-old woman, carefully colored gray hair, wrinkles etching tales of joy and heartache. And eyes that held the crushing weight of a secret kept for nearly 3 decades. A truth that, if unearthed, would shatter the pristine image Mike held of his deceased father. How a devoted grandmother like me found herself branded ungrateful before her own family. This story, though, began long before, when Mike was just a boy. Everything began to change about 6 months ago, when Jen was promoted at the law firm where she works. New responsibilities meant longer hours, more pressure, less time for Leo. Mike, an engineer for a construction company, also had a tight schedule, and inevitably their gaze settled on me. At first, I loved spending more time with my grandson. Leo is a ray of sunshine in my life. With his golden curls and that cherubic grin, that sweet gap in his front teeth, he could brighten the bleakest of days. School pickups 3 times a week settled into my routine. He'd even spend the night when they had evening plans. But little by little, pleasure bled into obligation. Requests hardened into demands. Gratitude grew scarce. My own needs, doctor's appointments for my worsening arthritis, evenings with my book club, even my Monday painting class, were pushed to the back burner. "Mom, this meeting is crucial for me," Mike would plead over the phone. "Carol, just this once. Next week, I promise, we'll sort it," Jen would assure me, a promise that never materialized. That Sunday morning, before the fateful lunch, I'd received a call from Dr. Miller, my rheumatologist. He'd managed to fit in an urgent appointment for me on Monday. My fingers throbbed, so swollen I could barely grip a teacup without a searing ache. "Mrs. Wallace, I managed to get you an appointment for tomorrow at 3 p.m. You need new tests urgently. This medication isn't performing as it should." That's why, during the lunch, when Jen casually laid out her expectation, pick up Leo from school, keep him until 7, I had to refuse. And that's when her words hit me like a slap in the face. "You are such an ungrateful grandmother." Back in their bathroom, I dried my tears, took a long, shuddering breath. When I emerged, the living room air was thick with unspoken tension. Mike remained a statue of silence. Jess busied herself distracting Leo. Jen, a vision of nonchalance, scrolled on her phone. "I should go," I announced, my hand already finding my purse. "Already, Mom? But we haven't even had coffee." Mike finally spoke, his voice tight with discomfort. "I'm a bit tired today," I replied, my gaze carefully avoiding Jen's. "Leo, come give Grandma a hug." My grandson ran and hugged me tight. Holding him close, a familiar ache tightened my throat. He whispered in my ear, "Grandma, are you coming back tomorrow?" "Not tomorrow, sweetie. Grandma has a doctor's appointment. but we'll see each other again soon enough. Jess offered to drive me home, and I accepted. The silence held, heavy, until we were almost at my building. "Mom, you shouldn't let Jen talk to you like that," Jess said, knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Your sister-in-law is stressed with work," I recited the familiar refrain, the one Mike always offered. "Stress doesn't justify disrespect. And Mike? Why didn't he defend you?" I sighed deeply. Your brother always ducks conflict, you know, just like his father. As I mentioned Frank, I felt that familiar pang deep in my chest, the weight of the secret I'd carried for so many years. Frank and I, young and deeply in love, married and had our 2 children. Outwardly, we were the ideal family portrait. Mike was born first, and 2 years later came Jess. We lived in a comfortable house, had friends, went to church on Sundays. Frank worked as a bank manager. I was an elementary school teacher. The first motel receipt tucked in his shirt pocket. I bought his excuse. A work party. Strange calls to the house? Wrong numbers, he'd say. I'd accept. His constant late nights? Overtime. And I swallowed that too, until one day 27 years ago, when Mike was 12 and Jess 10, I received a call that would change everything. "Hello, can I speak to Frank?" A young female voice asked from the other end of the line. "He's not here. Who's calling, please?" A beat of silence. "Tell him Diane called. It's about Kevin. He has a high fever. We're at the hospital." "Kevin? Who's Kevin?" My stomach dropped like a stone. Another pause, longer still. His son. Our son. My world imploded. Frank had a secret family. For years. Diane was 15 years younger than me. Kevin was the same age as Mike, 12 years old. They lived less than 20 miles from our house. When I confronted Frank, he didn't deny it. He wept, pleaded for forgiveness, swore his love for me and the children. A mistake, he insisted. Couldn't end it once Diane was pregnant. "Carol, please, think of the children. Mike, Jess. How could they ever know? Mike, he idolizes his father." It was true. Mike shadowed Frank, mimicked his every gesture, dreamed of joining him at the bank. Jess, though fiercely independent, adored him too. Divorce, exposure, I considered it all. Even met with a lawyer. But then I pictured the fallout for my children. Mike's adoring gaze when Frank walked through the door. Jess's joyful shrieks as he spun her in the air. And I made the hardest decision of my life. I stayed. Conditions for Frank. Discreet financial support for the other child. No more pooling our resources. One more lie, I warned, and I'd expose everything. Mercilessly. For years I endured that painful arrangement. Frank continued his clandestine visits. I took on 2 jobs. Teaching mornings, secretarial work afternoons, to ensure my children wanted for nothing, knowing a portion of Frank's salary went to his other family. Mike and Jess never knew. I shielded the image of the father they adored. Even when Frank died 5 years ago, felled by a sudden heart attack, the secret remained mine. At the wake, I spotted Diane and Kevin. Discreet figures at the back, paying their respects without a hint of who they were. Kevin. He had Mike's eyes, the same stubborn chin. No one seemed to notice. Or if they did, they said nothing. "Mom, are you listening to me?" Jess's voice brought me back to the present. We were pulled up to my building. "Sorry, honey. Just thinking." "You always defend Mike. You always protected him and Frank from everything." For a moment, I wondered if Jess suspected anything. She was always sharper than Mike. "Mothers protect their children. I said, a vague answer to a pointed question. Sometimes I wonder if you didn't protect him too much, she murmured, but didn't push it. In the days that followed, Jen's phone went to voicemail. Mike called me briefly, muttering too stressed with work, advising me to let it go. No apology, no hint of the sting her words left. Thursday, a text from Jen. We need you Saturday. Mike and I have an important event. Can you watch Leo? It wasn't a request. It was a demand, thinly veiled, as if I were merely an on-call employee, not a woman with her own life. I stared at the screen, minutes ticking by, before tapping out a simple, defeated yes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, thinking about how my life had become a litany of concessions. First for Frank and his secrets, then for my children. Now for my grandson and a daughter-in-law who saw me as little more than a convenient sitter. At my appointment with Dr. Miller, the news was grim. My arthritis had worsened. He recommended a new, more intensive treatment. Carol, you must take better care of yourself. Reduce stress, follow the exercises, take your medication on time. Most importantly, you need to think more about you. Her words echoed in my mind all week. Think more about myself. When had I last done that? On Saturday, I arrived right on time at their house. Jen barely glanced up from her intricate makeup routine. Mike pecked my cheek, already out the door. Leo bounded into my arms, the sole beacon of genuine joy in that house. Grandma, did you bring games? Let's play hide and seek. We spent the afternoon together, drawing, doing puzzles, watching cartoons. I made his dinner, his favorite, spaghetti with red sauce, and then helped him with his bath. As we brushed our teeth together, making funny faces in the mirror, Leo's bright face clouded. Grandma, why did Mommy say you don't like me? The question caught me off guard. It was a gut punch. When did she say that, sweetie? The other day. She told Daddy you didn't want to play with me. Said you don't really like me. That innocent question shattered something deep inside me. I knelt, ignoring the sharp protest of my knees, and met his gaze. Never believe that, my love. Grandma loves you more than anything in this world. More than chocolate. More than ice cream. More than all the stars in the sky. He smiled, showing the familiar gap in his front teeth, and hugged me tight. I love you more than anything too, Grandma. After I tucked him into bed and read his favorite story, I watched him sleep, so small, so utterly innocent. I thought of Mike at that age, how I worked 2 jobs, just to replace the money Frank siphoned off to his other family. How, even exhausted, I always found time to read stories to him and Jess. I thought of all the secrets I kept to protect my children. The tears I swallowed when I first learned of the betrayal. The forced smiles at birthdays and graduations. The weight of the lie crushing me. And then for the first time, the question formed. Who protected me? Who looked after me while I was looking after everyone else? That night, after Leo was asleep, I sat in the living room and wrote a letter. In it, I didn't reveal the secret I kept for so many years, but laid bare how disrespected and used I felt. I explained that I needed space and time to take care of my physical and emotional health. I loved them deeply, but would no longer be treated as a mere convenience. When they arrived, I left the envelope on the coffee table, said my goodbyes. Jen's eyebrow quirked, surprised by my new composure. Is everything okay, Carol? Mike asked, a flicker of concern in his eyes. We'll talk another day, I said, picking up my purse. A letter's on the table. Read it. I walked out of that house, a strange cocktail of anxiety and relief surging through me. How they'd react, if they'd understand, if they'd change. I had no idea. What I couldn't have imagined was that simple letter would ignite a chain of events, unearthing far more than my hurt feelings. The secret I'd guarded for so long was about to crack open, and perhaps it was time for some truths to finally surface. 3 silent days passed. On Wednesday, Mike appeared at my door, his eyes bloodshot. "Mom, we need to talk. I never saw how unfair we've been to you." I invited him in. I poured him coffee. For the first time in years, my son truly listened. I didn't reveal the secret about his father. Maybe I never will. But I shared everything else I'd kept bottled up. My deferred dreams, my overlooked needs, my desperate wish to be seen as a woman. Not just an available grandmother. But what came next was worse. Mike sank onto the couch in my small living room. His hands, clutching the coffee cup, trembled slightly. I sensed a weight beyond simple regret for Jen's behavior. "Mom, after I read your letter, I started thinking, really thinking, how you were always there for Jess and me, how you worked so hard after Frank died." I swallowed hard. "Your dad was a good man, Mike." The words were automatic, a mantra decades old. Was he really? His gaze, raw and intense, made me flinch away. "Jess called me last night. We talked for hours. She said she always suspected something was off with your marriage." My heart hammered. The small living room walls seemed to press in. "Your sister always had a wild imagination." I tried to smile. My lips trembled. "Mom," Mike set his cup down, then took my hands. 2 days ago, I got a strange message on Facebook. A man named Kevin. The name dropped like a grenade. My fingers turned to ice within my son's grasp. He said he needed to talk about Frank. Important information, he called it. Mike paused, his eyes drilling into mine. "Do you know a Kevin, Mom?" The past has a cruel way of catching up, no matter how long you run, how far you hide. In that moment, sitting across from my son, the weight of 27 years of secrets buckled my shoulders. "Mike," I began, my voice a brittle whisper. "There are things about your father you don't know." "What things, Mom?" His eyes, so achingly like Frank's, drilled into me with a desperate blend of fear and resolve. I drew a shaky breath, closing my eyes. A specific afternoon nearly 25 years ago flashed in my mind. I returned to Mike, still waiting. How to tell him his father, the man he'd idealized, had lived a carefully constructed double life. How to admit the missing money, the crucial absences, the casual lies, all threads in an elaborate tapestry woven to support 2 families. "Your father had another family," I finally said, the words dropping like lead. "A son your age, Kevin." Mike's hands recoiled from mine as if burned. His face drained of color. "What? Number, that can't be true." "I found out when you were 12. His mother, Diane, called me. Kevin was sick, in the hospital." "And you? You stayed with him? After finding that out?" Mike's voice, laced with disbelief, sliced through me. "I stayed for you, Mike. For you and for Jess. So you'd have an intact home, a father who was there to protect the image you held of him." "Protect us?" He stood abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. "Protect us? With lies? My whole life was based on a farce?" "It wasn't a farce," I protested, tears stinging my eyes. "Your father loved you. He just made profound mistakes." "Mistakes?" Mike let out a hollow laugh. Keeping a second family for decades isn't a mistake, Mom. It's a deliberate choice. Day after day, year after year. He stopped pacing and stared at me, a new chilling understanding dawning in his eyes. That's why you worked so hard. The 2 jobs, the late nights grading papers. It wasn't just a teacher's meager salary, was it? My gaze fell, unable to meet his. A portion of your father's money went to them, I admitted. I made up the difference, so you'd never lack. Mike buried his face in his hands. When he lowered them, his own tears streamed. All those years, you carried that burden alone. And even when he died, you allowed everyone to eulogize him as an exemplary husband and father. He was your father, Mike. I couldn't bring myself to tarnish that memory for you. Now this Kevin shows up. He murmured more to himself than to me. My half-brother. The word hung in the air between us, strange, yet starkly, undeniably real. What does he want? I asked, dreading the answer. He said he wants to meet me. That now that his mother passed away a few months ago, he feels like he can finally seek this connection. Mike ran a hand over his face, wiping at his tears. He has photos, Mom. Photos of Frank with him as a kid. No denying it. A knot tightened in my chest. Diane was gone. The other woman, the one who'd embodied my deepest pain for so long, was finally gone. A strange current of relief and sadness flowed through me. What are you going to do? I asked softly. Mike sank back onto the couch, suddenly drained. I don't know. Part of me just wants to ignore it all, pretend this conversation never happened. Another part wants to meet him. After all, he was deceived too, wasn't he? He also grew up with lies. I nodded slowly. He likely knew nothing of your existence either. We sat in silence for a few minutes, each lost in our own fractured thoughts. Finally, Mike spoke again, his voice calmer. Why are you telling me this now, Mom? After all this time? The question caught me by surprise. I paused, weighing my words. Because I'm tired of secrets, son. Tired of shielding the image of a man who cared little for our pain. And because... I hesitated, finding the words. That letter wasn't just about feeling like a convenient babysitter. It was about being invisible. About a lifetime sacrificed for others, only to be treated as if none of it mattered. Mike reached for my hands again, clutching them tight. I'm so sorry, Mom. For everything. For the way Jen treated you. For the way I let it happen. And most of all, I'm sorry for everything you went through alone all these years. In that moment, an enormous weight lifted from my shoulders. Forgiveness wasn't what I sought. I'd never felt guilty for protecting my children. It was understanding, recognition of the sacrifice. What are we going to tell Jen? And Jess? Mike asked after another long silence. Jess already suspects. As for Jen, I sighed. That's for you, son. She's your wife. He nodded, thoughtful. She needs to know. She needs to understand why you're so vital to me, to all of us. Why you deserve every ounce of our respect and gratitude, not demands and accusations. The following week, Mike arranged a family dinner at his house. We were all there. Me, Jess, Mike, Jen, and little Leo, who was sent to play in his room after dessert. Mike laid it all bare. About Frank, about Kevin, about my silent decades of sacrifice. Jess confirmed her long-held suspicions, especially after Frank passed, seeing Diane and Kevin at the funeral. I saw them, weeping quietly at the back of the church, she said. He looks so much like you, Mike. I almost asked Mom, but I never found the courage. Jen remained silent for most of the conversation, her face a shifting mask of shock, then dawning comprehension. When she finally spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "Carol, I have no words. I treated you so unfairly, so selfishly. And all this time you bore that burden alone." "I did what I thought was best at the time," I replied simply. "Protecting my children was my priority. Even if it meant hurting yourself in the process," Jen finished, tears welling. "I never understood. I never imagined." Mike's arm went around his wife. None of us fully understood. Mom's stronger than we ever knew. That night ushered in a new chapter for our family. Jen's apology wasn't just words. Her actions in the weeks that followed spoke volumes of genuine change. 2 weeks later, Mike called. He'd met Kevin for coffee. The conversation was difficult, emotional, brimming with unexpected discoveries and profound connections. "He has 2 kids, Mom. I have nieces and nephews I didn't even know existed. And he looks so much like me. It's unsettling. Same gestures, same way of talking." "How did you feel meeting him?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Strange. A strange mix of anger and connection. Anger at Frank, not at him. Kevin suffered as much as we did, maybe more. At least we had Frank home regularly." I nodded silently. The children. Always the greatest casualties of adult deceptions. "He wants to meet you, Mom. Said he always knew about you and admired you from afar. For your strength." That caught me by surprise. "He knew about me?" Apparently, his mom told him the truth when he was 16. He was furious with Frank for a while, but eventually came to terms with it. He said he always wanted to meet us, but he respected Frank's wish to keep the family separate. I was silent, processing this new information. Diane, the other woman, had been more honest with her son than Frank ever was with ours. "I'll think about it," I finally replied. "I don't know if I'm ready for that meeting yet." A month after that revealing conversation with Mike, I got a text from Jen. Unexpected. "Carol, I'd like to invite you to a special lunch on Sunday. Just us. Can we talk calmly?" I accepted the invitation, curious and a little wary. We met at a quiet restaurant, away from their house. Jen looked visibly nervous as we settled. We ordered our food, and while we waited, she finally spoke. "First, I want to apologize again for the way I treated you. There's no excuse for my behavior." "I've accepted your apologies, Jen," I said, genuinely. "I know, but I need you to understand something." She took a deep breath. "When I met Mike, he talked about his dad like he was a hero. The perfect man, the ideal husband, the exemplary father. I grew up without a father, you know. He left when I was 3. Never came back." She paused, took a sip of water. "When Mike told me about Frank, about what he did, about how you protected everyone, something fractured inside me. I'd idealized him, based on Mike's stories. And worse, I'd treated you, the true hero of this family, as a mere convenience." Tears welled, then tracked paths down her cheeks. "You know what hurts most?" Leo asked why you hadn't come over to play with him anymore, and I realized that, because of me, he was being deprived of the wonderful grandmother he has. I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. "Jen, we all make mistakes. The important thing is to recognize them and change. It's what I'm trying to do." She wiped her eyes. "Mike and I have talked, endlessly, these last few weeks. About family, about honesty, about respect, about how we raise Leo." She opened her purse and produced an envelope. "This is for you. It's not much, but it's a start." I opened the envelope and found plane tickets to Florida and a week's hotel reservation. I know you've always wanted to see the Southeast, Jen explained. Mike told me it was a dream of yours and your friend Brenda's. Her ticket's in there too. It's for 2 months from now, after your arthritis treatment. I was speechless, staring at the tickets, in my hands. This, you didn't have to. I finally managed. Yes, I did. It's a small start to showing we recognize your worth, your dreams, your needs. That you're not just Leo's grandma or Mike's mom. You're Carol, a woman with her own desires, her own plans. That lunch truly marked the beginning of our reconciliation. It wasn't merely the trip, though Brenda and I had a marvelous time, but the recognition of my worth as a person, not simply as grandmother or mother. 6 months rolled by since that fateful Sunday. The ungrateful grandma incident. So much had changed in our lives. Mike and Jess cultivated a cautious, yet undeniably growing relationship with Kevin. They discovered connections beyond mere resemblance, shared musical tastes, a similar humor, even identical quirks. And Jen, she transformed, not just in her relationship with me, but in her entire approach to family life. She recalibrated her office hours to be more present with Leo. She included me in family decisions, always respecting my boundaries. As for me, I finally found the courage to meet Kevin. It was a simple lunch, just the two of us. I looked into his eyes and saw Frank, saw Mike, so much of them. It stole my breath. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice strangely familiar. "I know it can't be easy for you." "It's not," I admitted, "but I think I've carried secrets long enough." We talked for hours about Frank, our parallel lives, how one man's choices reverberated through so many. There were no recriminations, just two people seeking understanding, trying to move past. Before we said goodbye, Kevin held my hands and said something unforgettable. "My mother always said you were an extraordinary woman, that despite everything, you never tried to separate us from Frank, never leveraged the situation to hurt him or us. She admired you deeply for that." His words struck like lightning. I'd never conceived that Diane, the other woman, held such esteem for me. "She knew you worked 2 jobs to make up for the money my dad sent to us," Kevin continued. "It ate at her. In her final years, she made me promise. One day, when the time was right, I'd seek you out to thank you for your quiet strength." I went home that day, a lightness in my heart I hadn't felt in decades. Not that the painful past was erased. It would always be part of me. But I could finally share its weight. It was Sunday again. We were all gathered at my place for lunch. Mike, Jen, Leo, Jess and her boyfriend, and for the first time, Kevin with his wife and children. I surveyed this expanded family, rebuilt on painful yet honest truths. Leo played with Kevin's children, cousins unaware of each other's existence mere months ago. Mike and Kevin conversed in the living room corner, identical gestures, echoes of laughter. Jen approached, her arms circling my shoulders. "What are you thinking about, Carol?" "Life," I answered, smiling softly. "It comes full circle. Secrets have a way of finding their way into the light, no matter how long it takes." "Do you think Frank would be happy to see us all gathered like this?" she asked hesitantly. I reflected a moment. I don't think he ever had the courage to imagine this scenario. He lived divided, fearing his worlds would collide. But yes, deep down, I think he'd be relieved. To see that despite everything, we found a kind of peace. Later, after everyone had departed as I tidied the kitchen, I found a folded note tucked under a dessert plate. It was Leo's handwriting, still childish but clearly painstaking. "Grandma, you're the best grandma in the whole world. I love you more than chocolate, more than ice cream, more than all the stars in the sky." I smiled, tucking the note over my heart. Sometimes the secrets we keep protect us and those we love. Other times, it's the truth, no matter how painful, that finally liberates. Looking out the window at the starry sky, I thought of the decades I'd spent torn, protecting my children with lies, or wounding them with truths. In the end, I learned, truth, when shared with love, at the right moment, doesn't merely wound, it also heals. And as for being called an ungrateful grandma, those words, once a deep laceration, now felt distant, belonging to another life entirely. Because now, with absolute certainty, I knew I was so much more than merely a grandma. I was Carol, woman, mother, friend, survivor. A complete person with rights to boundaries, dreams, and respect. And that truth, finally acknowledged by those around me, was the most liberating of all.